In the night of the 9th of November of 1938, Luther's prophecy began to come true. The terror against the Jews reached its first peak in Nazi Germany. The so-called Kristallnacht was devoted to the honored reformer as a birthday present. Luther's hatred tirades against the Jews were put into practice. In assaults, at least 91 Jews were beaten and killed in the streets. Another 30,000 Jews were deported and imprisoned in concentration camps. Jewish houses, hospitals and schools were plundered and destroyed with the sledgehammers by the Nazis. More than 1,000 synagogues were burned. More than 7,000 Jewish stores were destroyed or damaged.
When the synagogues were burned to the ground, the Protestant Lutheran Church published a new edition of Luther's inflammatory pamphlet on the Jews and their lies. The preface was written by the Protestant regional bishop Martin Sasse. He triumphs with the following words: "On Luther's birthday, on the 10th of November 1938, the synagogues are burning in Germany. In this hour, the voice of the man who was a prophet in the 16th century must be heard. It was ignorance that first made him to be a friend of the Jews, but driven by his conscience, by his experiences and by the reality, he became the greatest antisemite of his time, the one who warned his people of the Jews." This was written in the preface of a church paper for Mecklenburg in the year 1938.
In the post-war years, a new image was urgently needed for the reformer. The antisemite Luther as church founder was not palatable anymore. The Protestant Church altered his biography. We get back to the questions our society is dealing with. How could this happen? Why did we not take notice any earlier? Why could we not prevent this from happening? And let me add another question. Why is our society blind in the right eye?
An inquiry of anti-Semitism commissioned by the German Bundestag proves that 1 of every 5 Germans is at least a latent anti-Semite. Anti-Semites are misanthropists. They are despisers of mankind, racists, antagonists of the Jews, women haters and xenophobes. They are in the midst of us. It can be the neighbor you meet in the supermarket, the mother who takes her children to school in the morning, the teacher of religion, the doctor, the journalist, the public official, the policeman, the professor, the politician, and so on. You can find them in cities and in villages, in all educated classes, in all age levels and in all income groups. It's not only the skinheads who spread terror publicly, but also the invisible misanthropists who pose a threat. The excrescence of this contempt for human dignity is evident in the murders of the right-wing terrorists Zwickauer Zelle.
How could this happen? Why did we not take notice any earlier? Why could we not prevent this from happening? Now, let us look at further aspects and see how the contempt for human dignity is reproducing unnoticed in our society. Listen to the following.
Professor Kriele, Emeritus Professor for General Political Science and Public Law and former judge at the Constitutional Court of North Rhine-Westphalia, today counts as one of the leading constitutional law experts in Germany. As early as in the year of 1996, Professor Kriele writes, "What should have shaken up the minds long ago?" He writes about the fascistic traits of the sect Hunt. Fascistic means anti-democratic. Fascistic means organized according to the Führer principle. Kriele's admonitions are abundantly clear. He describes the sect hunt in our time, the violation of human rights, the hatred for people with different faith. A typically fascistic element is their aggression against defenseless minorities. The commissioners for sect issues become raving mad whenever they encounter people people whose convictions deviate from the prevailing trend, taking advantage of their defenselessness, making them objects of contempt, jeering and ridiculing them, endeavoring to educate mere school children to marginalize and reject them. And further, another fascist feature of the campaign being waged against sects is the unawareness of the law. For example, the countless attempts at undermining, evading or violating the legal rules that are supposed to protect minorities. These include the disregard or the violation of the data protection laws, the indoctrination and manipulation of judges at the Academy of Judiciary, etc. And further, a typical symptom of fascist terror is that groups which are affected themselves keep their distance to other sects and become involved in the campaigns against these other sects in the hopes of getting on the right side of the sect hunters. Well, meanwhile, even leaders of Pentecostal and charismatic churches, formerly derided as sects, have adapted this code of behavior. Amazingly, even these hope to be accepted by the sect commissioners. Let me continue to quote. Another typically fascist element is the endeavor to create divisions in groups and to incite them to attack each other. And further, sect is another word for heretic, and what held for heretics in the past also holds today in Germany once more. Exterminandus est. If not by fire, then by defamation, isolation and economic destruction. It is obvious how the old Fritz, Friedrich II, determined our society's direction 250 years ago, when he said, of all sects, the Jews are the most dangerous and one has to prevent their number from growing. Basically, nothing has changed throughout history.
The behavior of children and adolescents is formed at an early stage, most of all in the parents' home and also at school. Children adopt their behavior from good and bad examples alike. If our today's generation sets an example of contempt for human dignity, children and adolescents will adopt this attitude. Since they have not reached maturity, they are easily influenced, as we can see in one of many examples. A summer night in Weidenberg. Teenagers defile the outer facade of a building. They throw bottles and stones. The building is damaged. The police investigates. Further acts of revenge follow. Bottles burst on the parking lot. Power cables are ripped out. The doorbell is destroyed. Now it is winter in Weidenberg. Teenagers draw a swastika in the snow, adding the words, "fucking sect."
Some of the students were caught and questioned by the police. They gave the reasons for their behavior. They had been taught in Lutheran religious education at school that their victim was supposedly a dangerous sect. Their teacher of religion, a former university chaplain, doctor of theology and private lecturer, his name is well known to the editorial team, has informed his students about this topic at the Richard Wagner Gymnasium. This is an academic high school in Bayreuth.
Can it be a coincidence that Luther's spirit is reflected in such a way at the Richard Wagner Gymnasium in Bayreuth, of all schools? Such scenes remind us of Luther's agitation against the Jews and the vandalism against the Jews in the Kristallnacht.
Why are lower leaders of society and politics blind in the right eye? The answer is at hand. The state church penetrates politics and state. Virtually every politician is involved in a state church. As long as there is no consequent separation between state and church, nothing will change, and Luther's mindset will be adopted by the next generation. Children will be misinformed by teachers who get their information from sect commissioners, and they will be brought up to hold others in contempt and educated to despise others. An appeal of renowned professors and scientists disapproves of the recommendations of the Enquete Commission. which scrutinized new religious movements by order of the German Bundestag. In their press release of the 28th of May 1998, the retired German federal minister Professor Dr. Hans Apel, Professor Dr. Gerhard Bessier, Professor Dr. Niels Bierbaumer, Professor Dr. Martin Kriele, Professor Dr. Hermann Lübbe, and Professor Dr. Erwin Scheuch disapproved of the recommendations of the Enquete Commission. Moved by serious concern, they appealed to the German people. We asked the German population neither to be impressed by the new mental monopoly and control claim, nor to be contaminated by the heretic hysteria of the sect hunters, nor to participate in the demonization of minorities or to denunciate others, because they take part in meetings of this or that group. However, hardly anyone paid attention to this warning.
Misanthropy and contempt for human dignity begins in the everyday life, with the words that are spoken and with the words that are accepted in the personal environment. The misanthropic and inhuman spirit of Luther subverts the values of our society. Silence finally turns into acceptance, be it due to cowardice, ignorance, or indifference. At first, it might only affect the other, the Turk, the Jew, the black person, the one with a different religion, faith, or mentality. In the end, you might be the target. Evil prevails only when good people fail to act. And one more thought at the end. How about unfeigned love for the Turks? Love for the Jews? Love for the blacks? Love for the strangers? Love for those who think differently, love for those with a different religion. How about being able to live out your own human rights in a democracy without facing discrimination?